of Cassie as well as David Phillips, one of the escorts in various parts of this case, parts that the government told the jurors to focus on. And now we have this note saying there's a partial verdict, saying that they have an unpersuadable opinion between them when it comes to that first count of racketeering conspiracy, but they have a verdict as it applies to the other 4 counts. Just as a reminder, that is 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, where Sean Combs faces 15 years to life for each one of those, and then transportation to engage in prostitution. And there's an either or for those 2 charges, where you could be talking about transporting either Jane or Cassie or any of the 25 plus male escorts that were allegedly brought across state lines. Each one of those counts carry up to 10 years in prison.
Well, and Brian, I mean, as a criminal defense attorney, this is day 2 of deliberations, and you get a verdict. We certainly expected one before the July 4th holiday, but I'm curious, if you were Diddy's defense team right now, how are you feeling?
A little happy. I mean, beating the top count is great, but the issue here is that with the sex trafficking charges, they have just as much of a penalty as it does in that RICO conspiracy, with the potential of life in prison. I'm a little worried, I think, especially of that Cassie charge. If he goes down on the charge against Cassie, that is a lot of time for a 54-year-old to be spending in prison, a minimum of 15 years potentially of life. But I think you're also optimistic and hopeful that verdict doesn't necessarily mean conviction. Verdict simply means they've come to a decision. With the RICO conspiracy, right now they're trying to figure out, do we simply stop them and kind of cut our losses and just keep that as a mistrial or a hung jury as to that count? Or do we give what's called an Allen charge, where the judge will instruct them to continue deliberating? Or, looking at the time, it's 4:47, to say, Judge, you know what? Maybe let them sleep on it. Maybe let them come back. Maybe they'll change their mind about some of the verdicts in a positive way for either side, defense or the government. But at that point, you're really just rolling the dice and just hoping for the best.
In that case, Brian, in your expertise, I mean, would we actually hear what the partial verdict is before that RICO charge is essentially determined?
Yeah, so there is a possibility that you would hear a polling of the jury, where either side, typically the prosecutor or the government, will ask to poll the jury to say, is this your true and final verdict, or some language along that sense. And they'll do it for all of the counts. They'll do it to make sure that if Sean Combs is convicted of any of the charges, that all 12 of them agree to that. Or if he's found not guilty of a charge, that all 12 of them have that as well. And it's likely that they will also do that for that RICO conspiracy. And you'll hear something along the lines of 10-2 to convict, or 6-6, or whatever the number may be. But I think that one side or the other will likely poll the jury to see what the numbers are.
And obviously, this is something that is developing right now. We just got a new note from our chief investigative correspondent, Eric Matursky, who's there inside that court. He said the judge will not take a partial verdict. He says that once the lawyers work out the language, the judge will call the jurors into the courtroom and instruct them to keep deliberating. Both sides asked the judge to do this. The judge agreed. No verdict is being read as of now. And again, this is going to continue to develop, so bear with us here. But Brian, you kind of ran down the 5 counts that Diddy faces right now. And so looking at the 6 weeks of testimony that we had here, the prosecution really trying to really kind of swing for the fences with this RICO count. Why do you feel like there's been a little bit of a holdup specifically on that particular charge?
So there are 2 parts of the RICO conspiracy that have to be considered. One, do you believe this to be a criminal enterprise? And at first, I thought that might have been a foregone conclusion. And the reason why I say that is because they've gone to the second aspect of evaluating the predicate acts. And when they asked for that definition of drug distribution, that to me made me think that everyone thought that this was a RICO conspiracy and they were moving on. But now hearing this note that they're hung, I have to imagine, and I could be wrong, I've been wrong in the past and I'll be wrong in the future, but I have to imagine it's the question of whether or not it's a RICO conspiracy. Because there are so many, I think there are about 8 to 10 predicate acts, that so long as they're unanimous in their belief that one of these predicate acts happened and they get 2 of them, that's halfway to RICO. there are so many of them, the arson, the sex trafficking, the prostitution, the transportation to engage in prostitution, the bribery, the obstruction of government. I would imagine that 2 could be found amongst this 12, but the linchpin, the centerpiece of whether or not there's a racketeering conspiracy or this is just a business that Sean Combs operates, I would think that would be the sticking point that some people are just going to say, you know what, I don't believe it, and they're really digging in their heels.
Well, and again, just to refresh our viewers, prosecutors allege that Combs was the ringleader of an alleged enterprise that abused, threatened, and coerced women into prolonged drug-fueled sexual orgies with male prostitutes, which he called freak-offs, and then essentially threatened them into silence. There were 6 weeks of testimony. Federal prosecutors called 34 witnesses to the stand, attempting to prove their case. Combs' former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, was the star witness during this trial. She testified that Combs subjected her to a decade of abuse and that the threats and sexual demands from Combs drove her into addiction, exposed her to regular spates of violence, and ultimately led her to contemplate suicide. And Brian, reflecting specifically on Cassie's testimony, I mean, how powerful was that for the prosecution in proving at least some of their case here?
So I would say when it comes to cases of sex trafficking or sexual abuse, especially decades in the past, it oftentimes is a he said, she said. But the government had a key piece of evidence, that being the video of the Intercontinental Hotel. And it was a big part of this case, both when Cassie took the stand, as well as clearly during the closing argument, and clearly from that note asking about the testimony surrounding that very incident. And so they had something to show for the force, the brutality, the violence that was exerted upon Cassie, and even some of the photos of the aftermath, the black eyes, the bruises to her body, the witnesses like her mother or friends or other associates who came on and testified about the brutality of Sean Combs. And I think that really helped in carrying the day of asking whether or not Cassie was a victim of sex trafficking, especially by force or threat of force. Put aside the coercion or the fraud. I think for Cassie, the conversation in large part is about force and being able to see it, being able to hear it, being able to see Cassie as she describes it, sitting on the stand. I think that was powerful for the jury in making their decision about the sex trafficking. Now, do I believe and assume that that might not work out well for Combs in terms of the verdict? Yes, but we still don't know what their verdict is. It appears that by the number of counts they've decided on the sex trafficking, it's just which way they go will be interesting. I will say this one added point, though. It's interesting to go back and ask them to decide on the racketeering conspiracy, because if Sean Combs is found guilty of racketeering conspiracy, there is this portion of the indictment that talks about forfeiture, that Sean Combs would have to forfeit any proceeds of the racketeering conspiracy, any money that was used to facilitate it. And so if they're hung on the RICO, it could save Sean Combs his empire or his enterprise, at least his legal one, in terms of the money that he would lose from it. Don't forget, he has about 60 civil lawsuits still around the corner when this ends. So I think trying to get a definitive answer as to that racketeering conspiracy could be helpful or very harmful to him based on not just his liberty, but also the money associated with him.
That's very interesting. And one more note just on the timing of this all. We're hearing from the court that it's not yet clear if jurors will continue deliberating tonight or if they will opt to go home for the day. But I want to get to Rena Roy, who is outside the courthouse right now. And Rena, I imagine that for the crowds of media and onlookers that have gathered day in and day out for this trial, there's been a reaction there. What's it like there right now?
Yeah, well, Alex, you can probably see behind me across the street there that crowds have started to gather. A substantial number of people have started to show up. They've been cheering, making all kinds of noise. Combs' family actually just went inside the courthouse in the black vans that they have been using really every single day of this trial here. As we know, this partial verdict came down more than 12 hours into deliberations here. And inside the courtroom, we are told from our teams who are inside there that the body language was really just striking, that it was very quiet. Federal prosecutors were not saying much to each other. Combs looked to be very emotional. He seemed to have tears in his eyes that he was wiping away. Now, as we know, they reached this partial verdict, so the judge is going to be instructing them, it seems, to go back into the deliberation room, Alex.
Rena, thank you for that. It was a little hard to hear. I think we're gonna work on the audio situation there. But I want to go back to Brian on this and Rena's point about Combs's body language in there. And listen, I imagine if you have a client that you're defending and there's a verdict that's rendered which will one way or another reshape the rest of their life, it can be emotional. But we're hearing at one point he appeared to wipe his eyes. He was the defense attorneys were standing there in a huddle around him. Take us through. I mean, what's playing out if you're on that side of the courtroom in that moment?
So I've been in this position many times where you have a note from the jury and you're making that decision of what do we do? You're getting everyone together and everyone's giving their 2 cents and you're having this conversation of walking through the idea with your client there so they can absorb everything. Sean Combs is what we would call maybe like an intelligent or a complex client. There's someone who is very sophisticated and intelligent, and you can speak to them as if they were an attorney as well. I don't assume that he's not going to be able to understand the strategy that attorneys are going to be breaking down in front of him, and you just kind of put everything on the table, and you have everyone's experience there. You have a lot of attorneys here with experience. You have Alexandra Shapiro, who's a very experienced appellate attorney. He's probably going to give her 2 cents of, okay, if this moves in this direction or this moves in that direction, this is how we can appeal, this is how we can argue. Maybe we do this, maybe we don't do this. You have people like Brian Steele and Xavier Donaldson, who are very tried and tested trial attorneys, trying to figure out what we do next, and Sean Combs will take that information and then decide how to move forward.
All right, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Rena. We're going to take a quick break, but after the other side of that, we're going to have more updates on this partial verdict in the Sean Diddy Combs trial.
All across America.
Good morning. Hello.
Wherever we are.
Welcome. It's good to be home.
It feels like home.
When's the last time we dropped our things and went? Woke up somewhere that we've both never been. Growing up doesn't mean
Good morning. How are you?
At the start of the day, letting us into your home, putting the good in your morning.
Man, it's good to be home.
like a river connects to the ocean. This pavement taxi wherever we're going. White lines flying by. Who knows what we'll find? You and me tonight.
GMA.
Hey, everybody.
It's an invitation to come together. Brighten your morning
I'm George. How are you?
and the day ahead.
The vampires and daywalkers hate each other. We're all in danger.
This is war!
Fight for what you believe in.
Success is the... Hold on. I just had it.
Unless everything changes.
This restaurant needs to officially cease operations.
Because keeping it open would be like
Beating a dead horse.
Before you throw it off a cliff.
we get it. I think we get it.
Try to keep up, yeah?
Walk like a G. Here you go, Neil.
Sitting down with Barbara Walters.
I know you don't want to talk about guys, and I won't push it, but how are you going to find anybody?
No one ever got out totally unscathed.
You don't really act. You don't sing. You don't have any, forgive me, any talent.
She was fearless, and sometimes she got under people's skin.
My God.
She asked the question nobody else had asked.
She could talk to anyone about anything.
Right now, ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Walters.
Looking for me.
Disney and Pixar's Elio is the best Pixar movie in years.
This is the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
This is the bathroom.
And Pixar's best original since Coco.
I am not fireproof. Just get in my mouth. It's actually kind of comfy in here. It is? I've never been in there.
It's the reason we go to the movies. You are more puny than I expected.
I could say the same about you.
What?
Disney and Pixar's Elio. Rated PG. Now playing only in theaters.
Imagine going from hip-hop kingpin to facing the possibility of life in prison for alleged sex trafficking. Now, with the trial underway, what will happen next inside that courtroom? Bad Rap, the case against Diddy. Listen to breaking news on the Diddy trial wherever you listen to podcasts.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Brachet in Washington. We have breaking news right now on ABC News Live. A jury reaching a partial verdict in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs. A note sent to the judge saying that the jury is unable to reach a verdict on the racketeering conspiracy count, adding that there are, quote, unpersuadable opinions. Both the prosecution and the defense agreeing with the judge and his plans to instruct the jury to continue deliberations, and next steps are apparently being debated right now. So for more on this, I want to get right outside to the court there. Rena Roy is standing by for us. And Rena, I'm curious, what's the scene been like outside this courthouse as news is trickling out that there is at least a partial verdict here?
Yeah, well, Alex, you and I were on the air together when this note came down in the 12th hour of deliberations. At the time, we didn't know what exactly it would say. And as soon as people started to learn that this was a partial verdict coming from the jury room, we started to notice more and more crowds gathering outside. You can see them there behind us. They are standing behind those barricades. And just a short time ago, we also saw Sean Combs' family, his children, going inside the courthouse. Now, as we know, the sticking point here is the racketeering conspiracy charge, the RICO charge here. And I have the verdict sheet in my hands. And just looking at it, you know that it is a complicated charge, because under it falls 8 different predicate crimes: kidnapping, arson, bribery, witness tampering, forced labor, sex trafficking, transportation for purposes of prostitution, and drug distribution. Now, as we know, the jury sent a note yesterday asking for clarity on that drug charge. They wanted to know if somebody asking for drugs before they receive them should change how they consider that drug allegation. The judge simply referred them back to the original instructions on drug distribution, which essentially says that if somebody hands over or delivers a drug to somebody and it doesn't require a sale, that is distribution, essentially. So that seems to be one of the sticking points here. That was something that they were clearly parsing through. They have reached a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5 involving the sex trafficking of Jane and Cassie Ventura and the transportation for prostitution charges as well, Alex.
Well, and Reno, one of the other notes that went to the judge, it was a question about juror number 25. He's a PhD in molecular biology, lives in Midtown, and I also believe that, you know, as a profession, he's a veterinarian, but that note said that we are concerned that juror 25 cannot follow your honor's instruction. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, Alex, that note came just about 70 minutes into deliberations on Monday morning. The jury seemed to be facing a bit of discord in the jury room with this man who's 51 years old, lives in Manhattan. He has a PhD. They said that he was unable to understand the judge's instructions, and the judge said, get back to deliberations. It is your duty. They were sent back to the jury room. It seems like they did make some headway, of course. We did see them send several other notes since then. In total, 6 notes, including this one announcing that they do have a partial verdict, Alex.
Well, in Rena, right now, do we know if the jury is going to continue deliberating today, or if they're going to decide to call it a day and reconvene tomorrow?
Well, right now, that is still up in the air. It seems like they are still trying to figure out the next steps here. We know that both sides do want them to continue deliberating, and the judge plans to tell them to do so. The jury sent a note saying that there are unpersuadable opinions on both sides when it comes to this RICO charge. So we are standing by out here waiting to see how this all unfolds, whether they'll stay here tonight or whether they'll be right back here tomorrow morning, as they have been for more than 6 weeks at this point, Alex.
Okay, Rena, if you can, I'd love for you to stick with us. I want to bring in ABC News legal contributor and criminal defense attorney Bernarda Villalona, who has also been following this trial as it's been progressing. And Bernarda, look, you know, the news today of this partial verdict, it's day 2 of deliberations. You know, if you're a criminal defense attorney for the Diddy team, how are you feeling right now? Is there anything to glean from a partial verdict coming on day 2?
So you have to think, when you're dealing with a partial verdict, the prosecution's not going to want to take that partial verdict because you want all or nothing, in the sense of that you want, if this jury can actually continue deliberating, that they be able to reach a verdict. However, on the defense team, I will be very nervous of what that verdict is when they're talking about the partial verdict, because the racketeering conspiracy, it could be an issue as to the enterprise and the people actually had knowledge about the predicate acts and made that agreement to enter into those predicate acts. But when you're dealing with those other counts, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're dealing with the sex trafficking of Cassie. Remember that the note prior to this had to deal with, they wanted testimony of Cassie and those 3 specific freak-off acts that had to deal with sex trafficking that the prosecution highlighted during the closing arguments. And for the jurors to actually make that request of that transcript, I would be very nervous if I was the defense, having to deal with the sex trafficking, having to deal with Cassie, because in the end, that sex trafficking charge carries a mandatory minimum of 15 years.
Well, and that's a really important point, right? Obviously, the racketeering conspiracy charge is the most serious here, but the sex trafficking charges certainly carry really stiff penalties, including a maximum sentence of life in prison here. And so I'm curious, in looking at the strategy for the Diddy team here, they rested their case without calling a single witness here. Do you agree with that playbook?
So the thing is, when the defense decided not to call any witnesses, not even the forensic psychologists that they wanted to come back, Dr. Hughes, they decided to go with the strategy of all or nothing, in a sense that they were going to attack the government's prosecution and their charging decision matters, and also go at to the credibility of these witnesses of being in consensual relationships, that they remain in these relationships. And in the end, Cassie especially had gotten $30 million as a result of 2 different settlements. So they went for straight credibility as opposed to trying to change the narrative and the deliberation strategy. If they would have put a witness up, whether it was Sean Combs or another witness to testify, that the jury will be focusing on, do I believe the witnesses that Sean Combs called to the stand, as opposed to, let's just focus on the prosecution, since they have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And the defense can always say, I don't have a burden. I don't have to call a single witness, and the judge is going to tell you that, because the government brought these charges, so they better be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not my job to do their job for them.
Well, and Rena, I believe you're still with us. Listen, you've been here the entire 6 weeks of this trial. In terms of testimony, I mean, whose testimony has really kind of been the linchpin here in this case?
Well, I think it's exactly what the jury asked to see more of today. They wanted to see the transcripts of Cassie Ventura's testimony. It was harrowing. It was graphic. It was very emotional. Many called her the prosecution's star witness. It was because of her civil lawsuit that federal prosecutors even started looking into Sean Diddy Combs in this trial. He was arrested shortly after her civil lawsuit. About a year later, last year, they raided his homes and they brought him into federal custody. And we know that this seems to have been a really difficult journey for Cassie Ventura based on what we heard from her on the stand. Specifically, the jury wanted to hear her testimony from that now infamous video from 2016 where we see Combs kicking and dragging Ventura. She testified that that is when she was trying to leave a freak off at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. And the jury seemed to really want to see that again, as well as some testimony regarding a freak off here in New York at the Essex Hotel with a male escort named Daniel Phillip. He had testified to the jury that he saw Combs get violent with her then as well. So it seems like they were really focused on these instances that prosecutors had highlighted as alleged sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura.
Well, and Rena, I want to dive in here a little bit on the jury. These 12 individuals, we know 8 men, 4 women. Any more that you can tell us about the makeup here?
Well, we know that their ages range from about 30, 31 to 74 years old. They, of course, all live here in the New York area. One of them was actually an alternate that got pulled in when another juror was dismissed about halfway through the trial because the judge said that he was not forthcoming about where exactly he lived. We know that they're educated. They're college educated. They had advanced degrees. They come from really all walks of life. They get their news from all different sources. Some of them say that they had heard about the allegations against Combs. Some of them said that they really didn't know much, but they all vowed to really be a blank slate here. And that was the reason why they were chosen to be on the jury, because they said that they would be able to be impartial and weigh only the evidence in this case rather than anything that they've heard in the media or elsewhere.
Well, and Bernarda, in your experience, I know you've been in this moment before as a client of yours is awaiting their fate, a decision that one way or another is going to change the course of their life. We're getting these notes from inside the courtroom here, and it says that at one point it appeared that Diddy was wiping his eyes and that he rested his chin in his hand. His defense attorneys, at least two of them, stood with their arms around one another. What is that moment like?
Well, that moment is very nerve-wracking. I will tell you that I was a prosecutor for 16 years, so I did it on the opposite side for 16 years, waiting on that verdict. And also, I've been a defense attorney and currently am a defense attorney. Now, when it comes to a trial, I am not nervous at any point during the trial, with the exception when you get that note that there is a verdict, because you lose all control at that point. So in terms of the defendant, Sean Combs, right now, you got to think that his fate, his future lies in the hands of these 12 jurors. And now they know at least the answer as to 4 of those charges, how it will affect Sean Combs. So it is very nerve-wracking. Especially, I've been sitting in that courtroom throughout this entire trial, with the exception maybe of a day or two. And the way that the attorneys and surround Sean Combs and support him. So for me to hear how they're huddled around him, they're holding him, he's wiping tears from his face, and his family inside of that courtroom also trying to figure out what is the fate of this human being, because they know of the large exposure that they have. Right now, all they can do is try to comfort him and to tell him that regardless of what happens, that they will move forward with future legal action, being if it is a conviction, that they will move with the appellate process, so to still stay strong.
I appreciate that, Bernarda. And we just got a new note. The district judge said that he plans to read back a portion of the jury instructions to encourage further deliberations. And part of that instruction, it includes this paragraph that says it is your duty as jurors to consult with one another and to deliberate with the view of reaching an agreement. Each of you must decide the case for himself or herself, but you should do so only after a consideration of the case with your fellow jurors. That's a partial statement there. Again, the judge going on to say your verdict must be unanimous, but you are not bound to surrender your honest convictions concerning the effect or weight of the evidence for the mere purpose of returning a verdict or solely because the opinion of another juror. For more on this, I want to bring in Kelly Carter, who is a senior entertainment reporter for ESPN's Anscape. And Kelly, when we talk about the legacy of Diddy, it's hard to think about the 90s in hip hop without mentioning his name. But this is a trial that has now really impacted that legacy.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I think so many of us have been playing this, and when I say us, I really mean the entertainment industry, has been playing this wait and see game. And I think that regardless, and this is the truth of the matter, is that regardless of whether there's a conviction or there's acquittal, this trial changes how we talk about Sean Combs' legacy moving forward. You know, it'll be virtually impossible to talk about, you know, all the contributions that he's had without also talking about how the summer of 2025 had all of us, you know, learning new things about him and perhaps looking at him and casting him in a different light because of these allegations. And of course, he has denied all of the allegations, but I think there are still, you know, some details that will be really difficult for people to unhear. And in the case of that video at the Intercontinental, unsee. And I think that really changes how we talk about Sean Combs and his legacy.
Certainly, but it is actually. I mean, I think aside from his personal hits and seeing him on episodes of Ellen or on red carpets, he's someone who has had his hands deeply on the pulse of music for the last several decades.
Absolutely. The fact of the matter is that Sean Combs is a cultural icon. He really kind of defined in a lot of ways what Black excellence is. He really was able to walk people into rooms, walk a generation, the hip hop generation, into rooms that we never thought we would see the hip-hop generation be able to walk into. We all of a sudden were invited to sit, Fashion Row front week, or Fashion Row week front row, partying with Anna Wintour, going to the Met Gala, walking into Forbes 500, Fortune 500 companies and getting deals that we didn't imagine people in hip-hop would ever be able to get. And a lot of that happened because of Sean Combs and his influence. So, I mean, to dismiss the fact that he is a cultural icon and a beacon for this community and has done so much for this community is impossible. But you now have to look at it, right next to kind of what we all have experienced and been covering this summer with regards to this trial.
All right, Kelly, Rena, and Bernarda, much thanks to you all. We're going to take a quick break and much more coverage on the other side.
I'd never seen that many skeletal remains. Thousands.
This killer, he's the Dahmer you've never heard of.
There were mannequins, almost like it was a club.
I felt the presence of evil.
Never before a face-to-face interview with the camera.
Why now?
Let me ask you, am I the evil culprit, the accomplice? I'd like to know how the audience views me.
The Fox Hollow Murders, Playground of a Serial Killer, only on Hulu.
At any point, you can encounter evil.
Young woman riding her bike and she gets abducted.
Where is she?
It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
You get the phone call. She's been found.
One of the worst pains you can ever have.
I kind of had to stop my jaw from falling.
What kind of person would do this sort of thing?
Evil person.
She was almost home. The 2020 true crime event, Friday night at 9/8 Central on ABC.
You, me, Thursday night.
Press Your Luck returns.
Here we go, Elizabeth. Bam!
With big bucks. Big wins.
Designer handbag. Airstream trailer. Let's go.
And big whammies.
Oh, you're not invited.
Press Your Luck. New episodes return July 10th on ABC and stream on Hulu.
We're back, baby.
Yes.
I'm so excited to be here.
We actually watch you every night. You're in our bedroom every night.
The feud gets wild.
Come on. Grandma, he smells really good.
Weird.
Are you ready for this? You ready?
Take two. And famously funny. Name something your mate's booty has in common with the basketball.
It bounces.
Celebrity Family Feud. Season premiere Thursday, July 10th on ABC.
All right, we have more breaking news coverage here on ABC News Live Reports. The jury reaching a partial verdict in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs. A note sent to the judge saying that the jury is unable to reach a verdict on the racketeering conspiracy count, adding that there are, quote, unpersuadable opinions. Both prosecution and defense attorneys agreeing with the judge's plans to instruct the jury to continue deliberations, and the next steps are apparently being debated right now. We just actually got an update. The judge brought the jury back into the courtroom to tell them to continue to deliberating. He also said they can decide if they want to do that this evening or return to resume tomorrow in the morning. And for more on this, I want to bring in ABC News legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer, who has been following this along with us. And Brian, you brought up something called an Allen charge, which, and I'm going to attempt to put my legal hat on here, but that is essentially a jury rendering a partial verdict here that the judge could potentially accept.
Well, Well, Alex, like I say, you didn't pass the bar, but you know a little bit, and you do know a lot. Yes, an Allen charge comes from the Supreme Court case where if a jury has got to a point like we have here, where they say they're at an impasse, they feel for whatever reason that there cannot be a meeting of the mind of the 12 people, that they cannot go forward. And initially what will happen is a judge will read either the standard language of an Allen charge, and you can Google it, and you can probably find it for the SDNY or any kind of federal court, or they would kind of modify the language, making it shorter or longer, or emphasizing more aspects of it, depending on what the sides agree to. And basically what you're telling the jury is, it's your job to keep pushing forward. It's difficult, and we understand you may have different opinions, but lean on each other, talk to each other, try to converse, and see if there's other facts or arguments or suggestions where you can all come to consensus, whatever that consensus is. And in an Allen charge, you cannot feel like you are moving the needle in one way or the other. It has to be absolutely neutral. It cannot be suggesting that you must convict or that you must acquit, and that's what's going to happen. But this last message to the jury by the judge, I think, is going to be more telling than anything else. Because right now, it's 5:20 p.m. The judge has always instructed them that they can come back the next day. Tomorrow is Wednesday. It's still well within the game to come back and deliberate. Friday is July 4th. That's a day off. Thursday, they were told they're going to be off as well. And so if the jury says we are willing to stay, that would be a strong indication that they're close to a verdict, and we might get one today. If they say that they have to come back tomorrow, that would be a strong indication that the opinions of people are so strong, they're hoping that they can maybe sleep on it and come back tomorrow and start again. What we hear next from the jury will be very telling.
Well, and Brian, because this situation is developing literally as we speak, we just heard that the judge sent the jury back to the deliberation room. He gave them the option to either resume deliberations today or to adjourn and return in the morning. Said that he instructed them to send back a note whenever they came to a decision. They have come to a decision. They are adjourning for the day. They will be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. to resume those deliberations. But I want to get back to these counts. We've got 5 counts here, the most severe of which is that racketeering conspiracy, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. But counts 2 and 3 are also quite severe. And count 2 does also have that maximum sentence of life in prison as well.
Yeah, and it's not just, I know oftentimes when we talk in the news, it's easier to talk about the max, but oftentimes the minimum is the most harsh, because for those sex trafficking allegations of sex trafficking either Cassie or Jane, there's a minimum of 15 years. And I think that's very important when you're talking about anyone, but especially when you're talking about a 55-year-old, because you're talking about if Sean Combs is found guilty of even just sex trafficking Cassie, at best, he's not going to be able to get out until he is 70 years old. Now, when it comes to the feds, you often do 85% of your sentence for every year you spend in jail. You get good time, meaning that time cut off that sentence of 54 days. But 15 years is a lot, but life is life.
All right, thank you, Brian. We're going to take a quick break here. Much more breaking news on the other side.
The news never stops. We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We heard what appeared to be gunfire. The former president rushed off the stage.
Hurricane Helene ravaging the coastline of Florida.
It's moving really fast, screaming across the state.
And that's why ABC News Live never stops.
Taking you to the center of the story.
As news breaks live.
We hear the small arms fire around us.
We're right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
ABC News Live is there for you at the start of your day, all morning live.
ABC News Live, right there, as events unfold across the day.
ABC News Live, breaking down the day's top stories.
The Menendez brothers, resentenced to 50 years to life.
ABC News Live Prime going there, wherever the story is.
Are you going to build it back up?
And ABC News Live lighting up the weekends.
With breaking news and all the latest pop headlines.
Happy Oscars Sunday.
A lot to watch for tonight.
ABC News Live.
Because the news never stops.
Now you can listen to a podcast version of World News Tonight, available free wherever you listen. David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, the most watched newscast in America, and honored with the Emmy Award, winner for Outstanding Live News Program. More Americans watch World News Tonight with David Muir than any other newscast.
What is this place?
Hey! Jaywalker! Vampire!
Skywalkers hate each other. We come from a town where all monsters live together.
That is not gonna happen.
Fight for what you believe in.
One of our towns won't survive.
It's them or us.
You're watching America's #1 streaming news, ABC News Live. Breaking news, exclusives, live reporting. Keep streaming with ABC News Live.
Good afternoon. We have more breaking news coverage here on ABC News Live reports. A jury reaching a partial verdict in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs. A note sent to the judge saying that the jury is unable to reach a verdict on the racketeering conspiracy count, adding that there are, quote, unpersuadable opinions. So for more on this, I want to go to ABC News contributor and senior entertainment reporter for ESPN's Andscape, Kelly Carter. And Kelly, listen, we know that Diddy has been this pop figure for decades right now, but I'm curious, why did this case grip the nation despite there not being cameras allowed in the courtroom?
I mean, look, sex, drugs, and not rock and roll, hip hop. I mean, I think that people, it didn't matter that there were no cameras in the courtroom, that we only really saw artist renderings and sketches. I think people wanted to know, first off, who else might be showing up in court. I think at the beginning of this case, there were so many famous names that were tossed out there that people didn't know if this was going to be, the biggest film premiere of all time, except, in a courtroom or not. And I think that people wanted to, tune in and refresh, their social media accounts and refresh whatever news sites they were looking at to call any information about this because of that. They wanted to hear people like Kid Cudi testify and finally say something for the first time after reading about what allegedly happened in that initial Cassie lawsuit.
And reading about, also seeing the pictures of that Porsche 911. Kelly Carter, thank you so much. We're going to take another quick break. Much more breaking news coverage on the other side.
Whenever, wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed.
Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas,
Edinburgh, Scotland.
from Poland once again tonight. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw. Do you think you'll ever be able to go back home? We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City. Splintered houses and splintered lives. The magnitude of the devastation. You're streaming ABC News Live. Reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Raleigh, North Carolina, the U.S. Capitol, Mayfield, Kentucky,
Minneapolis,
Mexico, Tongass National Forest, Alaska.
Getting you behind the stories as they happen, giving you a front row seat to our world as it plays out in real time, live.
ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights, America's most honored streaming news program, only on ABC News Live. Streaming free right now wherever you stream your news.
You, me, Thursday night.
Press Your Luck returns.
Here we go, Elizabeth.
Bam!
With big bucks,
$50,000.
big wins,
Designer handbag. Airstream trailer.
Let's go.
and big whammies.
Oh, you're not invited.
Press Your Luck. New episodes return July 10th on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Sean Diddy Combs on trial. Stunning word-for-word testimony. The all-new episode.
What did Sean do as you were on the ground in a ball trying to cover your face and your head?
He started punching my head. He started kicking me.
In the end, what you knew, Jane, was that you love Mr. Combs, right?
Yes,
And I think you said even 2 days ago you love him currently. Is that right?
I do.
Diddy on trial as it happened. All new weekly on Hulu.
We're back, baby.
Yes. I'm so excited to be here.
We actually watch you every night. You're in our bedroom every night.
The feud gets wild.
Come on. Grandma, he smells really good.
Weird.
Are you ready for this? You want it.
Take two. And famously funny. Name something your mate's booty has in common with the basketball.
It bounces.
Celebrity Family Feud. Season premiere Thursday, July 10th on ABC.
America's #1 news, ABC News, now streaming 24/7 on Disney+.
Thought I had it under control. All you have to do is breathe. I think I have to fight magic with magic. There's always a cost.
You see what you're made of. Might be a hero in there after all.
Let's get to work.
Ironheart, now streaming on Disney+.
Reporting from near The Hague for the NATO summit, I'm Selena Wang. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Bechet in Washington. We begin with our big story. The jury in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs is done for the day after reaching a partial verdict in their second day of deliberations. The jury saying that it reached a decision on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, but were unable to reach a verdict on the racketeering conspiracy count, which is count 1. The judge in the case saying that he will not take a partial verdict and instructed the jurors to keep deliberating. Those deliberations will resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. Combs faces 5 criminal counts in total. He has pleaded not guilty to all of those charges. So for more on this, I want to bring in ABC News' Rena Roy, who is outside the courthouse in New York City. And Rena, what do we know about this partial verdict and what the jurors weren't able to agree on?
Well, Alex, the judge gave the jury a choice. They could continue deliberating tonight or come back in the morning. As we know, they decided to go home for the night, maybe get some rest and continue back at it. They told the judge that there are some unpersuadable opinions, specifically when it comes to the racketeering charge. And I have the verdict sheet here with me, and you can see that it is a long list of predicate crimes here. There are 8 of them. There's kidnapping, arson, bribery, witness tampering, forced labor, as well as several others. And they did have a question specifically about the drug offense that falls under racketeering. They sent a note yesterday asking the judge for clarity on drug distribution. We know that the judge simply referred them back to the original instructions and they went back to deliberating. This, of course, is one of the most serious charges. It carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. And look, this has been a really emotional day in court today. Combs started today, as he normally does in court, greeting his family, praying, hugging them, blowing kisses. He also told his mom, Janice Combs, just relax. It's going to be okay. And when word came down of this partial verdict, he was teary-eyed. He was wiping his eyes. It was very quiet in the courtroom. Now, of course, we will not learn his fate until potentially tomorrow. We don't know. We'll have to see how long the jury takes to come to a decision on this racketeering conspiracy charge, Alex.
Well, and Rena, you mentioned him appearing to wipe tears from his eyes. We're told also that he maintained his composure when the jury was in the room as the judge instructed them to continue their deliberations. But I'm curious, listen, I mean, this has been the biggest trial in the country for the last 6 weeks. What is the scene there like right now in New York as people are debating and pontificating about what this partial verdict could mean, and also could we get a full one tomorrow?
Right, I think that's the big question, Alex. It is a waiting game at this point. We are waiting to see what happens. We could see it tomorrow. It could be another day. We just don't know. As the jury said, there are some unpersuadable opinions here, so it's going to be difficult for them. But the judge is saying he will not accept a partial verdict, so we're going to have to see how they handle that. We will find out hopefully sooner than later. I have been out here every single day of this trial, and I can tell you that there have been a lot of people out here. Every single day, people have been very interested. And you can see right behind me just how many people are gathered there. It appears that somebody might be leaving the courthouse. Crowds gather every single day as his family comes and goes. We saw his children come in ahead of the potential reading of that verdict. Of course, that did not happen because the judge did not accept the partial verdict here. But yeah, still a lot of questions here of what exactly went down in that deliberation room, what is going to happen over the next day or two. So we'll have to wait and see, Alex.
All right, Rena Roy, thank you for that. Now, let's bring the big story to our panel. Joining us today, ABC News contributor and former Republican New York Congressman John Katko, also ABC News political contributor and former Democratic North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp, Republican strategist Mahake Cook, and journalist and attorney Aaron Parnas. And John, I want to start with you, given your background, specifically as a former prosecutor. What do you make of the jury unable to reach a full verdict today, specifically on that racketeering and conspiracy count?
Well, yeah, you can never really fully understand a jury's logic, but I can tell you this: what's highly likely is going on here. It's highly likely that they found him guilty on one or more of those counts 2 through 5. And the reason I say that is if he was not guilty on all those counts 2 through 5, he would absolutely have been found not guilty on count 1, most likely. I should say absolutely, most likely. So it seems like what happens a lot with racketeering cases, and I've tried many of them, the farther you get away from like a mafia type enterprise or a gang or a criminal organization, the harder it is to explain to someone that this is a RICO case. So I think right now that jury's probably struggling with the RICO moniker for him, but they probably have reached a verdict on the other counts. That's just my guess. And the ironic thing is, yes, it's a maximum of life in prison on the RICO charge, but under the sentencing guidelines, it would be nowhere near that. And if he's convicted on those sex trafficking charges, they're 15-year mandatory minimum sentences each. So that's where the real meat is. And if he's convicted of one of those, obviously he's in big trouble.
Yeah. Well, and Aaron, hop in here as an attorney. What do you make of this partial verdict?
Yeah, I agree with John on really everything he just said. I mean, I think this is a very difficult day for Sean Combs right now. I think there's a reason he was wiping away his tears in the courtroom, and it's because I think he also understands that there's likely at least one guilty verdict in counts 2 through 5. Now, ultimately, I think RICO is a very difficult charge to prove. It was always going to be the hardest charge to prove here. And I think a lot of even analysts really said that prosecutors were kind of shooting for the moon with the RICO charges. And so I think I wouldn't be surprised if there is actually disagreement over what these predicate charges or the predicate acts, whether or not there's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt regarding some of the predicate acts, for example, kidnapping, arson, things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some disagreement over whether or not those occurred, 2 of those occurred within the period of 10 years. So I think that's really where the jury is stuck up on. But I really wouldn't be surprised if we see at least a partial verdict tomorrow entered with Sean Combs going away for a very long time, a mandatory minimum of 10 or 15 years in federal prison.
Wow. Well, and Mahake, I'm curious because, we're just day 2 of deliberations here and also already like this partial verdict on counts 2 through 5. Did that surprise you? Did you think it was going to go longer or is this about the pace of deliberations you expected?
Well, look, I think in my legal experience, as I sat back and I analyzed this case and I looked at it day by day, the prosecution, in my opinion, really didn't do a good job. They threw the book at Diddy. And while I agree that these crimes are heinous, they didn't do a good job prosecuting the case in terms of racketeering. As the other 2 panelists have already said, it is one of the hardest elements to prove when you're looking at predicate crimes. That means that Diddy and his inner circle committed at least 2 crimes together within a 10-year window: arson, forced labor, sex trafficking, kidnapping, bribery, witness tampering. 2 of those charges should have been brought up. And the fact that the prosecution didn't even bring up the chief of staff to come and testify against Diddy, I think she was integral in this RICO charge, really shows you that this is falling apart. I do think the fact that we have at least a partial verdict, I'm seeing guilt in there, but it's not as expansive as a RICO charge. So I wasn't really surprised. I think the jurors are really going to struggle with this.
Well, and Heidi, to Mahake's point, there are some that have pondered aloud about this racketeering charge, specifically that they may have thought that Diddy may have been overcharged with that as they were hearing testimony over the past 6 weeks. But I'm curious, in your estimation, in hearing some of the witness testimony that's played out as the prosecution is called now dozens of witnesses, did they get at their core case that he's guilty of that racketeering charge?
Well, obviously, they haven't convinced all 12 jurors that beyond a reasonable doubt that he is. There's a great deal of challenge, and I think there is going to be a lot of armchair quarterbacking on the charge. Was it overcharged? If you weren't coming, as you've heard before, if you weren't coming with all the evidence, then why engage in the charge? But let's not forget that this is not a good day for Diddy. This is a horrible thing to be accused of. It's even worse when the facts have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. This is a jury that obviously is doing a lot of detailed work and analyzing. If you look at the fact that they were able to come to some kind of verdict on the other 4 counts and are struggling with this one, it tells you that it's a jury that's doing its job. I think that now what we're going to turn to is, was there reversible error? Was there something that Diddy on appeal can basically argue? And I think given that unless we get to a RICO charge, given that the rest of the charges were pretty straightforward and a jury came to these verdicts within a couple days, I think that tells you that the evidence is there.
Well, I can tell you all that on a day like today, I'm thankful for a panel full of lawyers. John, Heidi, Mahake, and Aaron, thank you all. And stick with us because we're going to have more after the break.
What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
An operation to capture ISIS fighters.
Is this our combat operations center?
We're approaching the gate now. Militants came in from 4 or 5 different directions.
Operational nuclear reactor.
So you have a couple loaded and ready to go. The house is destroyed, but the flag, there's not a tear in it.
Not a tear in it.
How important is this label right here, Made in the USA? Look at your smile. You're proud of this.
I love it.
Great work.
Hi.
Where are you? Where are you?
Appreciate you.
Thank you, David. Good to meet you. Ismail? David.
David.
Yes, yes. I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
I watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
At any point, you can encounter evil.
Young woman riding her bike and she gets abducted.
Where is she? It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
You get the phone call. She's been found.
One of the worst pains you can ever have.
I kind of had to stop my jaw from falling.
What kind of person would do this sort of thing?
Evil person.
She was almost home. The 2020 true crime event, Friday night at 9/8 Central on ABC.
What is this place?
Hey!
Jaywalker! Vampires!
Chill, chill, chill! The vampires and daywalkers hate each other. We come from a town where all monsters live together.
That is not gonna happen.
Fight for what you believe in. One of our towns won't survive.
It's them or us.
Imagine going from hip-hop kingpin to facing the possibility of life in prison for alleged sex trafficking. Now, with a trial underway and Diddy's life hanging in the balance of a New York jury, what will happen next inside that courtroom? Bad Rap, the case against Diddy, breaking down every new twist, turn, and development inside the courtroom. Listen to breaking news on the Diddy trial wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, in today's Spotlight, President Trump touring the remote migrant detention center in the middle of the Florida Everglades, a so-called alligator Alcatraz. Officials say that the facility will eventually hold up to 5,000 people and is part of the president's effort to ramp up deportations by expanding detention capacity. While on the tour, Trump revealed some new details about who will be held there. Take a listen.
It's known as alligator Alcatraz, which is very appropriate because I looked outside and it's not a place I want to go hiking anytime soon. But very soon this facility will house some of the most menacing migrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet. We're surrounded by miles of treacherous swampland, and the only way out is really deportation.
All right, let's bring back my panel, John, Heidi, Mehek, and Aaron. And Heidi, I want you to kick things off for us. We're seeing a lot of pushback against construction of this facility, specifically from some of the local tribes that are in that area. But what do you make of all of this?
Well, the first thing, you saw a 20% increase in the Department of Homeland Security, and so this has now become Republican policy. But I think that what you're seeing played out in the real world, in front of Home Depots and in strawberry fields, is that these aren't the worst of the worst people. These are people who have not committed crimes, and I think the public is seeing that it's not the guy who has committed all of these crimes that the president keeps talking about. It is their next door neighbor. It is their daughter's son or daughter's husband. And so I think that we keep letting this president say he's only deporting criminals. That's absolutely not true. And when you look at this kind of investment, wouldn't it be great if the investment was made in actually devising an immigration policy that works for our economy, creates fairness in terms of a path forward, and actually does strong border security? This is all a big movie show as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, he loves the title Alligator Alcatraz. That somehow fits the narrative of being a tough guy, but I'm not convinced that it's going to advance any kind of meaningful agenda on immigration or deportation.
Well, and Mehek, hop in here. I mean, do we need an alligator Alcatraz?
Well, let me be very clear. Heidi is misleading when she's stating that these people aren't the worst of the worst. These are criminals. The minute you come into this country illegally, that is a criminal act. That's your first act in America. I'm a legal immigrant. I came here legally. I take notice to Democrats today that continue to be staunch supporters of illegal immigrants. And yes, we do need a facility for the worst of the worst. Gang members, traffickers, violent repeat offenders. You're seeing statistics today, 13.5 illegal immigrants that are in our country that that didn't go through any type of security background check. We have violent offenders. We've seen rape. We've seen all of our women and children that have been victims of illegal immigrants. So yes, we have to protect the American people. And this is the fastest way to do it. This signals to illegal immigrants that if you come to our country and you commit crimes by entering, you're going to be detained. You're going to be deported immediately.
Heidi, you were name checked there. You want to respond?
Well, I mean, you know, let's be honest. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about people who have committed violent criminal acts, not people who have come into this country. He has said repeatedly, and if that's true, then why would he want to carve out an exception for hotel workers or for, you know, farm workers? This is a policy that is changing every day, and it doesn't necessarily reflect the values of this country. Should they have come here legally? Yes. Have they been here for 20 years undocumented? Many, many of them have, and they're not criminals in the sense of hardened criminals who have committed violent crime.
Well, and John, I want you to hop in here because, listen, I mean, the construction of this is going to take some time. And obviously, you know, he has the support of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. But I mean, what do you make of this whole process?
Well, first of all, I agree with both Mehek and with Heidi. I agree with Heidi in that we need immigration reform to really fix this. But I also agree with Mehek. The moment you come into this country illegally, you've committed a federal crime. So the reason they're building these facilities, the reason we need facilities, is that there was such an influx under the previous administration at the border, they couldn't house them all. So what they did is they just let them into the country and gave them a piece of paper and said, show up for court at X date, and of course the vast majority of them don't show up. So you need these holding facilities to process the illegal aliens, whatever the degree of criminality is, but also to process them and make sure that they're not paroled into the country and we lose sight of them. So the way I look at it is this facility is necessary. The marketing with Alligator and Alcatraz and all that nonsense. There's air conditioning, there's doctors, there's security. I mean, they're not sleeping on dirt floors, so let's call it for what it is. It's just more showmanship than it really is substance.
Well, but also to that point, I mean, Aaron, this is meant to be a deterrence, right? It's not just a facility to hold 5,000 detainees. It's also, you know, the rollout about the pythons and the alligators and being surrounded by all these dangerous animals. I mean, that's part of the marketing here to deter.
I mean, sure it is, but I think that restricting basic human rights and civil liberties in the middle of a swamp Well, I mean, that's not really deterrent because a lot of the folks, I think a point that is really missed in all of this, a lot of the folks that are being detained and deported right now, they've never been charged with a crime. They've never been convicted of a crime. In fact, about 50% of those detained thus far have never been charged with a crime. Many of the people being detained are like a grandma, an Iranian grandma in Louisiana who had been in the United States for 47 years and was recently detained by ICE, or a 6-year-old kid with leukemia in California who was recently detained by ICE. These are the people that are being picked up. They are here legally. They're going through the process legally, getting asylum, getting green card, and they're getting picked up on the streets, and they're literally being taken to these facilities, which are just cruel and inhumane.
All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. But John, Heidi, Mehek, and Aaron, I'd love for you to stick around because coming up, we're going to switch gears. Nothing but net. Some big news and big moves for the WNBA. My panel weighs in on the league's expansion.
The news never stops.
From Tampa, we are here tonight as Hurricane Milton has just made landfall.
The surge just keeps coming up.
Right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
We're in artillery position about 2 miles away from Gaza.
And ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
We're not far from where this rally took place, so just stick with us here.
Traveling with the president to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Here in London today,
off the coast of Gaza.
Downtown Tel Aviv, rockets or missiles coming in.
From the most devastating disaster in Hawaii. Some areas are still smoldering.
Wherever the story.
From the front lines, the ruins of Rafah.
From the FBI.
Reporting from Capitol Hill.
In western Portugal, outside of Mexico City.
In Iceland. Let's go.
Here in France.
The eclipse across America.
Just stunning.
Unbelievable.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
We're going to take you there.
You're streaming
ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere because the news never stops. The Chrisleys, Life After Lockup. Now streaming on Hulu and Disney+. When your songs have over 30 billion streams, where do you go to light up the morning? Monday. It's Louis Capaldi, live on GMA. Monday, only on Good Morning America's Summer Concert Series, sponsored by Massage Envy.
It's time to party!
Monday.
And now we're in the jungle.
Ready to find some love.
Let's dance, Paradise.
Paradise is back.
Good things are coming.
New beach.
Viva la Costa Rica!
New challenges. And here come the Goldens.
Oh, look, I got my inner knees done. They're reformed.
Bachelor in Paradise, season premiere, Monday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
We're back, baby.
Yes.
I'm so excited to be here.
We actually watch you every night. You're in our bedroom every night.
The feud gets wild.
Come on. Grandma, he smells really good.
Weird.
Are you ready for this?
Take two. And famously funny. Name something your mate's booty has in common with the basketball.
It bounces.
Celebrity Family Feud, season premiere Thursday, July 10th on ABC. David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, the most watched newscast in America, and honored with the Emmy Award, winner for Outstanding Live News Program.
Time now for our last call and some big moves on and off the court for the WNBA as teams continue to garner support with growing fan base and game attendance. The league has announced a planned expansion with 3 new teams coming to Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia. The WNBA commissioner made the announcement yesterday, revealing that the teams will be added within the next 5 years. And so I want to throw this to the panel: John, Heidi, Mehek, and Aaron. And Heidi, the commissioner added that the expansion shows the powerful reflection of the league's momentum. What do you make of this?
Absolutely. And it might not be popular to say this, but they should all be thanking Caitlin Clark. She has driven the interest in this, along with the drama that goes around with her participation on the court and other folks on the court. But the bottom line is this is great for women's athletes, for women's athletics, more opportunity for people to play professional sports. Yay, way to go. I hope this is just the beginning.
Mehek, you're out there in Ohio. We got a new team coming to Cleveland.
I'm really excited as an Ohioan. Look, I believe girls should be playing girls sports, but this expansion is massive for Ohioans today because we're continuing to see more women in sports. And as a sports agent, I have helped so many athletes at a collegiate level. So to continue to see expansion in women's sports is a celebration.
Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. I mean, and I think it's really not just Caitlin Clark. It's Angel Reese, it's Paige Becker in Dallas. I mean, the real young crop of WNBA stars is really just so exciting to see. So this is an awesome thing happening.
Well, and John, Heidi brought up the Caitlin Clark effect, and certainly her draft, along with Angel Reese, has really kind of sparked and really kind of introduced a lot of folks to the WNBA game. But what do you make of this continued growth and expansion here?
Well, Caitlin Clark is probably at the top of the heap of why people are attracted to it. But there's a lot of great young players, like some of them mentioned, and a few years ago, LA had an expansion fee of $50 million. The three teams are going to pay $250 million each. So that didn't happen overnight, but it's a sign that this is great growth. It's great sports, and Caitlin Clark is definitely helping, and all the others are. There's a lot of good young talent. They're going to ruin this game, though, if they don't stop the nonsense on the court. The violence on the court against each other is worse than in any sport, and I'm a hockey player. These guys are hitting each other, and they better get it under control because they're going to kill the golden goose if they don't. So I hope they do, and I think they will. And they better pay these kids more because they deserve it.
The Catco really passionate there. Heidi, I saw you laughing. You want to hop in here?
Well, I mean, John, I so seldom disagree with you, but I think that on-court drama is what's driving a lot of the attendance and a lot of the attention. And so, there's a little WWE in all of this, too.
Everyone loves a show. Everyone loves a show. All right, that is our last call for this half hour. John, Heidi, Mahek, and Aaron, thank you all. And thank you for streaming with us. I'm Alex Boucher. Follow ABC News Live wherever you stream live news. And coming up at 7 p.m. Eastern, be sure to catch ABC News Live Prime with Linsey Davis for the day's biggest stories and the impact they have on you. The news never stops, and neither do we. We'll see you in a bit.
Across America.
Good morning. Hello.
Wherever we are.
Welcome. It's good to be home.
It feels like home.
Hi. When's the last time we dropped our things and went? Woke up somewhere that we both never been. Growing up doesn't mean
Good morning. How are you?
At the start of the day, letting us into your home. Putting the good in your morning.
Man, it's good to be home.
GMA. It's an invitation to come together.
Happy birthday.
Brighten your morning.
I'm George. How are you?
And the day ahead. At any point, you can encounter evil.
Young woman riding her bike and she gets abducted.
Where is she? It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
You get the phone call. She's been found.
One of the worst pains you can ever have.
I kind of had to stop my jaw from falling.
What kind of person would do this sort of thing?
Evil person.
She was almost home. The 2020 true crime event. Friday night at 9/8 Central on ABC. Now you can listen to a podcast version of 2020. Available free wherever you listen.
I'd never seen that many skeletal remains. Thousands.
This killer, he's the Dahmer you've never heard of.
There were mannequins, almost like it was a club.
I felt the presence of evil.
Never before a face-to-face interview with the camera.
Why now?
Let me ask you, am I the evil culprit, the accomplice?
I'd like to know how the audience views me.
The Fox Hollow Murders, Playground of a Serial Killer, only on Hulu.
At any point, you can encounter evil.
Young woman riding her bike and she gets abducted.
Where is she? It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
You get the phone call. She's been found.
One of the worst pains you can ever have.
I kind of had to stop my jaw from falling.
What kind of person would do this sort of thing?
Evil person.
She was almost home. The 2020 true crime event, Friday night at 9/8 Central on ABC.
Tonight, the showdown over President Trump's spending bill. Will enough Republicans get on board? Plus, the president visits the detention center being called Alligator Alcatraz. World News Tonight with David Muir is the #1 newscast in America.
Reporting from the deadly flooding in Louisville, Kentucky, I'm Alex Perez. Wherever the news is, we'll take you there. You're watching ABC News Live.
Good evening. I'm Alex Perez in Washington, and we begin with breaking news here on ABC News Live. The jury in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs is done for the day after reaching a partial verdict on their second day of deliberations. The jury saying that it reached decisions on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, but were unable to reach a verdict on the racketeering conspiracy count. The judge in the case saying that they will not take a partial verdict and instructed the jurors to keep deliberating. Those deliberations will resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. Combs faces 5 criminal counts in total. He has pleaded not guilty to all of those charges. So for more on this, I want to bring in ABC News' Rena Roy outside that courthouse, also ABC News legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer, ABC News legal contributor and criminal defense attorney Bernarda Villalona, and ABC News contributor and senior entertainment reporter for ESPN's Anscape, Kelly Carter. And Rena, I want to start with you. The jury resumes those deliberations tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. This was really a dramatic end to a second day of deliberations.
Yeah, Alex, very dramatic. We were on the air together when this note came down in the 12th hour of deliberations. The jury saying that there were unpersuadable opinions in the jury room, that they could not come to a decision, to a verdict on count 1, this very serious charge of racketeering conspiracy. But the judge, as you pointed out, said he would not accept that and said that they can continue tonight or come back tomorrow. He gave them that decision. As you pointed out, they decided to reconvene at 9 a.m. The judge reread them their instructions, saying in part, it is your duty as jurors to consult with one another and to deliberate with a view to reaching an agreement. Now, before they went home for the night, he told them to make sure that they keep an open mind as they continue their deliberations. Meanwhile, we're told that Combs was in the court during this. He maintained his composure while the jury was in the room, but just moments before, he was emotional when this note came in, when he learned that there was a potential verdict here. He was teary-eyed. He was wiping away his tears. So a lot to keep an eye on here, Alex, as we wait for them to come back tomorrow.
Yeah, certainly. Well, and Brian, I'm curious, were you surprised that it's the racketeering conspiracy charge that the jury couldn't agree on?
No, I'm not really that surprised. I think between, and I won't want to speak for everyone, Bernarda and I have been in the court from day one, so has Shauna Lloyd, and so we've kind of talked about this, that there might be some difficulties, I think, not necessarily in the predicate acts, but I think in whether or not this is a criminal enterprise. To get 12 people to sign onto that, I think is difficult, and to hear that there are unpersuaded opinions that are differing between these people, I'm not shocked by that in any way, shape, or form. What I'm looking at now are the other 4 charges where there are a decision. In my mind, it's either guilty of all 4, not guilty of all 4, or maybe 2 and 2. And I say that just because of, I think they could be leaning towards a guilty as it applies to Cassie, as well as a transportation to engage in prostitution, as is to her. Just from what we've seen in the evidence, I think we may come back on Wednesday morning and see them finally say, you know what, we still can't move on this, and ultimately take a verdict.
Well, and Bernarda, hop in here, because I'm curious, what are you expecting from tomorrow's deliberations?
So I'm concerned about tomorrow's deliberation. This is the reason why, because a verdict is not official until it is taken by the foreperson. I would be concerned that what if one of those jurors that, even though they reached a verdict as to those 4 charges, say, you know what, I changed my mind. I don't feel that way anymore. And we're back at it where there is not a verdict as to certain of the charges. So I'm concerned of what can happen overnight. Now, tomorrow, of course, they're going to come well rested. Each of these jurors have the ability to think about their thoughts. us and the evidence that they heard. Of course, not to talk to anyone else because they're not allowed to deliberate unless all 12 jurors are inside of the room to complete deliberations. So tomorrow they'll come, fresh start, clear minds. Hopefully everyone's, in terms of tempers, have gone down and they'll be able to speak. But I wouldn't be surprised if they send another note and say that we cannot reach a decision as to racketeering conspiracy. The judge will read them the Allen charge, an official Allen charge. And if they send another note out and say that they can't reach a decision, then at that point, the judge will take that partial verdict.
Well, and Kelly, I mean, this trial has really captured the attention of the nation, which is remarkable because there aren't cameras allowed inside that courtroom. But regardless of what this verdict is, the legacy of Diddy is impacted here.
Absolutely. Either way this comes out, we're going to be talking about his legacy significantly differently than we talked about it before we got that initial civil lawsuit from Cassie. We have to remind people that this man, is solely, not solely, but is largely responsible for commercializing hip-hop, for really making hip-hop a billion-dollar business and making it, pop music, redefining what pop music was and put hip-hop in places that hip-hop had never gone before and never aspired to go before. And we're talking boardrooms, we're talking, fashion, worlds of spirits. So many worlds hip-hop has penetrated because of Sean Combs, and now, we were talking about him really kind of defining Black excellence and what that meant. And now we have to have a different conversation when we talk about the totality of what his legacy is.
Yeah, certainly. Well, and Rena, you are outside that courthouse in Lower Manhattan, and I'm curious. I mean, are there still crowds there? I mean, what has the mood been like?
Yeah, Alex, I think as people got word that the jury was going home for the evening, things started to clear out a little bit. You can see there are some people still standing around there. Of course, the crowds are just going to be massive, probably at 9 o'clock tomorrow when we see the jury come back for deliberations. We could see that verdict potentially come down tomorrow. We just don't know. But I can tell you that the mood here has been one of just a waiting game. People have been waiting to hear what the jury would come back with. And inside the court, as we've talked about, this has been emotional. Combs' family has been inside court almost every single day. And today, he looked at his mother, Janice Combs, and he said, just relax, it'll be okay. He blew kisses. They have joined hands in prayer. They have bowed their heads in prayer. You can tell that this is weighing heavy on this family, and they are going to be here, I'm sure, again tomorrow as this jury goes back behind closed doors to continue deliberations once again, Alex.
All right, Rena, Brian, Bernarda, and Kelly, thank you all. And House Republicans now racing to pass the president's massive tax and spending cuts bill ahead of the self-imposed July 4th deadline. The House Rules Committee taking up the measure today after lawmakers in the Senate worked through the night to pass it. Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote in that chamber. 3 Republican senators opposed the bill, including Susan Collins of Maine, who walked up to the clerk and gave it a thumbs down. Let's get right to ABC News correspondent Jay O'Brien on the Hill, and also ABC News' Perry Russum here in our D.C. bureau. And Jay, I want to start with you right now. Does Speaker Johnson have the numbers for the final passage of this bill? And is it still on track to pass by July 4th?
I mean, right now he doesn't, Alex. Speaker Johnson just gaggled with reporters moments ago, and he indicated that, look, getting the votes here, getting the Republican conference in line, as he has done time and time again, is going to be a work in progress. He's got roughly a dozen, although it's really tough to put a number on it, either holdouts or firm no's or those who want significant changes to the legislation. Largely those are with fiscal hawks in his party who don't like the price tag of this bill, and really the price tag that came of it after the Senate rewrote this legislation. It's now estimated, according to the Congressional Budget Office, to raise the deficit, for instance, by $3.3 trillion. That's $1 trillion more than the House version of this bill was expected to do. And so that has drawn the ire of hardline Republicans. There are also some moderates in Johnson's ranks who don't like the Medicaid cuts and other changes to that program and to SNAP that were made in the Senate. So Johnson has got his work cut out for him, but he still says he's committed to that Friday deadline that President Trump has put forward. Here's what he said earlier today.
My objective and my responsibility is to get that bill over the line. So we will do everything possible to do that, and we'll work with all of our colleagues. We've got a lot of members flying into town. Some went home for the weekend because we didn't know what the Senate schedule would be and what it would yield. They're on the way back.
And look, there's also an attendance issue here. The weather is bad in Washington, D.C. We've heard from a number of members of Congress who say their flights have been canceled, or they've been delayed, or they have to drive in now. And Mike Johnson needs everybody present and voting. And if that's the case, and all Democrats show up too, he can afford to lose 3 Republicans. Alex.
Oh, it's interesting you brought up the weather. I mean, already we have more than 1,200 flights canceled nationwide, DCA being one of those airports most affected. But Perry, listen, we heard from Jay those concerns over the cuts to Medicaid, the concerns over the deficit, now $3.3 trillion. The votes right now aren't there. But, you know, this was the president said that he thought the bill would have an easier time in the House.
Yeah, I mean, it really took a victory lap today, Alex, saying we got what we wanted. He was very happy with the Senate passing this bill, but as you mentioned, it now goes to the House where it's really up in the air, as Jay was mentioning. But the president sounding very optimistic, very positive about it passing in the House, saying that he does acknowledge that some members of Congress are going to try to make changes to the bill in the House, but he says he's not sure if those changes are actually going to happen. We know the House Freedom Caucus is not happy with the way that this bill adds to the national debt, saying that those numbers are simply unacceptable. There are also concerns about cuts to Medicaid and what that means for Americans, especially in rural America. ABC's Mary Bruce speaking with the president earlier today. Let's take a listen.
And just to be clear on the Medicaid cuts, you've promised not to cut Medicaid, said this is all just targeting waste, fraud, and abuse. Are you saying that the estimated 11.8 million people who could lose their health coverage, that is all waste, fraud, and abuse?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's going to be a very much smaller number than that, and that number will be waste, fraud, and abuse. And if you look, they took a much more liberal stance on the Medicaid situation than they could have.
President Trump and the White House have kind of maintained this positive outlook, positive attitude on the bill throughout this entire process, with Trump saying today it's a great bill, and he says it's going to go very nicely in the House, Alex.
Well, in Jay, we talked about this bill squeaking by in the Senate. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska could have been that 4th Republican no, which would have essentially killed this bill. But I'm curious, why did she vote yes?
Yeah, she got concessions out of the top Republican in the Senate, John Thune, who gave her some concessions that are specific to Alaska, but largely changed certain policies on Medicaid and SNAP cuts. She added more money into a fund for rural hospitals to try to offset some of the concerns about those Medicaid cuts. He doubled that fund from $25 to $50 billion, and then also gave Alaska and some other states a kind of a carve-out that would lessen the impact of some of the SNAP, the food assistance cuts that go to those states. Here's a little bit of Murkowski saying that while she got what she wanted, she still doesn't like this bill, Alex.
When people suggest that federal dollars go to one of our 50 states in a, quote, bailout, I find that offensive. I advocated my state's interests. I will continue to do that, and I will make no excuses for doing that.
So look, she got what she needed out of this bill. You heard her just mention that, but also she's not in love with this bill. And that's something that we've heard from Republicans privately who even championing this bill say, look, they know they are going to have to run on this bill in the upcoming midterm elections, which are a ways away, but not as far away as you think. And so there is a concern about selling the language of this bill to the American people. But before they can even do that, they got to get it out of the House. And there's going to be drama there, too.
Okay, Jay and Perry, thank you. And a new round of severe weather is threatening holiday travel plans for millions of Americans. Powerful storms hammering the East Coast. They're already led to more than 1,000 flight cancellations at airports here in D.C. and in New York and elsewhere. And it comes as AAA predicts a record-breaking 72 million Americans that plan to take to the skies and hit the roads for the July 4th holiday. ABC News senior meteorologist Melissa Griffin has been monitoring it all for us. Hey, Melissa.
Alex, we're still talking about dangerous storms across the Northeast, and that will continue right through 9 o'clock tonight. The severe thunderstorm watch in effect for not just D.C., but Baltimore, Philadelphia, right outside New York City, all the way back through Richmond. We've already seen several damaging wind reports in the D.C.-Baltimore area, flash flood warnings, and this continues into the night. Take a look at the timing. By 6 o'clock into 7 o'clock, we're still seeing these storms intensifying. That means more frequent lightning, dangerous flash flooding possible on the roads. This is also a huge problem when it comes to flight and travel delays. Cancellations will continue to build into the evening. Across all the major airports, from New York City down through Philadelphia, back through D.C. as these storms continue. Finally, through the overnight hours, they do start to diminish a bit. Lingering rain, though, as we head into tomorrow, but thankfully the severe weather threat is over. There's severe weather in the west as well, not storms, but extreme heat. Extreme heat warning in Phoenix there for today, and we have heat advisories up into the Pacific Northwest. Now, this heat is going to progress eastward as we head through the holiday week. By 4th of July, the heat reaches the Midwest. Look at the high in Chicago, baking at 95 degrees on Friday for the holiday. But the good news is it's going to be hot. It's going to look dry as well. So a mix of sun and clouds for those outdoor activities if you have planned from the northern plains all the way to the northeast. Much of the East Coast looking dry and nice and sunny for the West Coast as well. Problem areas include Florida. We could see some scattered storms, a potential system developing there. Thunderstorms from Texas up to the northern Rockies. But for the most part, billions of Americans will be enjoying a very nice 4th of July holiday. Alex.
All right, looking forward to it. Melissa Griffin, thank you. And coming up after the break, President Trump touring the so-called Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center. The new details about who's being housed there and why the White House is boasting about its controversial location.
I'd never seen that many skeletal remains. Thousands. It's a serial killer case.
This killer, he's the dumber you've never heard of.
More and more men are going missing, and then the lead broke the case open. They discovered the farm.
The whole place was so bizarre.
There were mannequins, almost like it was a club.
I felt the presence of evil.
The largest number of unidentified human remains, second only to the World Trade Center.
Not many people live to tell about their involvement with the serial killer.
Everything we know about this case comes from you.
Absolutely. Let's not do that.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
Never before a face-to-face interview with a camera.
Why now?
Let me ask you, am I the evil culprit, the accomplice? I'd like to know how the audience views me.
The Fox Hollow Murders, Playground of a Serial Killer. Only on Hulu.
Amanda Riley was a mother, wife.
Everybody loved her.
I heard the words, "You have stage 3 blood cancer."
We gave our hearts, our prayers.
We thought she was God's gift, but she was a liar.
Why would somebody fake cancer?
There's all these pictures of her in the hospital with IVs, tubing. It was only a matter of time until Amanda's whole world came tumbling down.
Oh my God!
Scamanda. All episodes now streaming on Hulu.
I knew aliens were looking for me!
Disney Pixar's Elio is the best Pixar movie in years.
This is the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
This is the bathroom. And Pixar's best original since Coco.
I am not fireproof! Just get in my mouth. It's actually kind of comfy in here. It is? I've never been in there.
It's the reason we go to the movies.
You are more puny than I expected.
I could say the same about you.
What? Disney and Pixar's Elio. Rated PG. Now playing only in theaters.
Welcome back. President Trump today touring the remote migrant detention center in the middle of the Florida Everglades, the so-called Alligator Alcatraz. Officials say that the facility will eventually hold up to 5,000 people and is part of the president's effort to ramp up deportations by expanding detention capacity. Now, while on the tour, Trump revealed some new details about who will be housed there. Take a listen.
It's known as Alligator Alcatraz, which is very appropriate because I looked outside and that's not a place I want to go hiking anytime soon. But very soon, this facility will house some of the most menacing migrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet. We're surrounded by miles of treacherous swampland, and the only way out is really deportation.
ABC's Victor Akindo has the latest.
We're just outside the new migrant detention facility deep in the heart of the Florida Everglades. There is the entrance just behind us here. You might still hear some of the protesters. So-called Alligator Alcatraz sits on a remote airstrip, so Air Force One was able to land right here. President Trump meeting with state and local officials on the ground. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and Governor Ron DeSantis here as well. Trump taking a tour around the facility, now lined with tents and trailers with a capacity to hold 5,000 migrants. He then participated in a roundtable discussion. Trump telling ABC's Mary Bruce, this could be the standard in America for immigration facilities, and Louisiana and Alabama are looking into similar facilities. Here in Florida, environmental groups and Native Americans calling for the protection of the land, immigration advocates condemning the move, because of the harsh conditions. But the administration and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis argue that wildlife will help prevent detainees from escaping, calling it Alligator Alcatraz because it's in the middle of the Everglades, teeming with wildlife like gators and pythons. And all of this comes as the administration ramps up its deportation efforts. New data analyzed by ABC's own television station's data team showing a recent shift in arrest. The administration now arresting more migrants with no criminal convictions. In response, DHS saying 70% of ICE arrests were criminal illegal aliens. Alex?
All right, Victor, thank you. And several Florida Native American groups are speaking out in opposition to the so-called Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center, voicing concerns over the potential impact on the environment and the Native families in the area. So for more on this, I want to bring in Talbert Cypress. He's a chairman of the Miccosukee Business Council. Chairman, thank you for your time. And I'm looking here, and you say that the Miccosukee Reserved Area in the Everglades, it's less than 10 minutes from the facility. We're also told that your council held a meeting this afternoon to discuss next steps. What did you decide in that meeting?
Well, appreciate the time to get our voice heard.